Today's guest is someone whose career and creative spirit truly show what it means to own your UX path, not just as a designer, but as a leader who cares deeply about people, purpose, and doing work that matters. JJ Riggs has led design and brand teams at well known companies like Purple Mattress, Divi, and Bluehost. She's passionate about building strong team culture, helping people feel empowered in their roles, and using design operations to bring clarity and focus to the way teams work, because that's what leads to real, lasting impact. Outside of UX, JJ's a portrait artist and creative business owner based in Utah. Whether she's painting, hiking with her golden retriever, or exploring art museums, creativity is at the heart of everything she does. So please join me in welcoming JJ Riggs to the podcast. Hi, JJ. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for inviting me. You made me emotional with that intro.
Oh, good. I'm glad that it resonated. I know we often don't see ourselves the way that others might see or interpret our accomplishments or the things that we're really good at. And you sent me a lot of information about yourself, and all of this is true. So, if you don't mind just starting with a brief, like, how did you get into UX design and what does your career look like to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, this is a good question. I come from a graphic design background. When I graduated college, I jumped in feet first to doing design, multimedia type things. And I eventually had the opportunity to start working on websites. Even though UX wasn't a thing 20 years ago, we've honed our process more. Anything that was creative really interested me. I said started with graphic design, then started to learn HTML. As a creative, I did not think I would be able to handle HTML well, but it was fun to learn, and I'm glad I have some of that in CSS. Eventually, I was offered an opportunity to work as a creative director, and that was one of the biggest insights for me is having that experience, and that was truly one of my first leadership jobs. After that first creative director experience, I wanted to go into product design because of the knowledge you get to make decisions. Sometimes in creative direction, you have a process, but you're not close to why you're making certain decisions. I loved the metrics aspect and I started to love the methodology and the tools. I'm really glad that I pivoted from creative direction to product design. And that's just a snapshot of what I've done.
What do you think it was about what you were doing or what you're good at that made people think you would be a great leader?
Well, I can tell you, I could have been a better leader at
Uh,
that time. A lot of stuff I didn't know that I wish I knew, like influencing and having really good relationships, even with partners that you maybe don't understand or get along with. I started to learn that a little bit more in the product world, but I struggled as a creative director to be the leader that my team needed. But I had a lot of insights from that. For example, that ended up being a very dysfunctional team as a whole. I would never go back and not do it again because I learned a lot about what not to do. And I also learned a lot what was my participation in this dysfunctional environment because a lot of times we're like, oh, this experience was terrible and I just didn't like it. But we are part of that too, in some level. And I just didn't know what I didn't know, which was how to bond, how to build trust, how to see other people's perspectives. I think that was very important because I wanted people to see my perspective. But if I wasn't willing to understand them and where they were coming from, then they were never going to be able to understand where creative was coming from.
yeah. I love that. One of my goals with this podcast is to talk about like the real, and that's definitely is part of the role being a UX designer, being in product, right? Those are things that are always going to come up. And so thank you for being willing to share that. So it leads me into my next question, which is what would you say was one of your most defining moments in your UX career and how it shaped you? Obviously, that one shaped you and helped you along the way. Do you have any others that stand out?
I actually thought about this specific moment as being defining, and I'll share a little bit more why. I went from being in this dysfunctional environment to taking a new job with a highly functional environment, very collaborative. And I needed those to be back to back for me to see the stark difference between the environments. And it made me passionate about design operations. It made me passionate about creating an environment for designers where they can be successful. I think designers in general are greatly misunderstood in the industry. And for it to be a defining moment, what it did is it gave me a stronger point of view. It gave me more of a leg to stand on of what not to do and then what to do. And it was a really great experience. If I hadn't had those back to back, I wouldn't be able to show up to a company today and look at their team and say, hey, there's a little bit of dysfunction over here, but we're functional here. So we're not going to touch that highly functional space, but we're going to go work on this dysfunction. I'm able to see it a lot clearer now. I'm in the space where I want to advocate for design no matter where I go. Design and creativity, as you mentioned in the beginning, is where I'm passionate, and I want to make it a good place for designers and creatives to have the space that they need to feel good in their job, confident in their job, and be successful in their job.
You mentioned relationships multiple times and how those back to back experiences helped you recognize the importance of cultivating strong relationships amongst team members. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And what are some strategies that you've used to do that in
Yeah.
your roles?
Yeah. So I think what I'll talk about is the relationship between the trio. That comes up the most. Some companies have figured it out and are doing it really well, and other companies aren't doing that so well. When it comes to strategy, something I recommend to my team is if you're frustrated, don't ignore that frustration. Do something about it. Usually, you need to go where that frustration is telling you to go. For example, I know in my career, I've often been frustrated with an eng partner or a product manager partner just because I didn't understand their world. I've been in rooms where I'm like, man, it's so hard to talk to this person. And I don't know why, because I love people. I really enjoy being around people and being collaborative. But we just think sometimes so differently that it's really hard to meet on the same page. And when I notice that that's happening, at least for me or for someone on my design team, I ask them to spend more time with them intentionally. Let them know what things you like about them that they bring to the table because everyone needs to hear it. Even confident people need to hear what other people see in them. It's just a reminder that they're doing a great job and you like this. But what that's going to do is also you're setting the tone and being a leader to have them come back and work with you in the same way. And so it's very important for designers to be bringing in their partners to their process so that everybody has a great understanding. And I'm going to give you another tool really quickly. A lot of people cringe with this one because I need a better title for it, but I'm sure teams have heard about working agreements. It leaves a bad taste in people's mouth because it sounds like legalese or something so process heavy. And that's not exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about when it comes to a working agreement is team members need to sit down and say, hey, this is the stuff that I like to do, but I don't really like to do this thing. And what you might learn is someone else on your team loves to do that thing that you don't like to do. Each person on the team can fill in a gap. And then let's say multiple people don't like to do a certain thing. Guess what? Then all of you are going to do it because it has to get done. But there's a way to figure out, hey, you could take this stuff because you love it and you're passionate about it. I'm going to go focus on this thing. That's where those conversations need to happen. Anytime a team changes or has an adjustment or you switch in somebody else, you need to be having those working agreement discussions because it's just clear. Most dysfunction comes from poor communication.
I'm experiencing that in my recent months of four, and I want to mention just that, like, a working agreement is never a one and done. It's like, okay, we're gonna start here. And then as time goes on, things are going to surface as you are working together and taking actions. And you're like, oh, this part's not working. Or, oh, we didn't define this enough. Or he's doing the thing he hates to do, but it actually should be this person over here. So, yeah, working agreements and that communication piece, because it is ever evolving, that means that communication has to be happening regularly.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing that you mentioned that I'm just curious your opinion on. So, you're talking about creating an environment where designers and creatives can feel fulfilled. Do you find that creative people coming into a corporate business environment have different needs or different mindset that needs to be accounted for in a specific way?
So I
Yeah.
think what you're asking me is what is the environment that designers need within a business environment? And is it different than, being in a creative space? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, because I feel like creative people, there are a lot of outside thinkers, right? Like outside of the box type thinkers. And yet you come into this environment that has a lot of structure that's necessary in order to communicate the value of it, right?
Yeah.
Like of design
Yeah.
itself.
So I really do like this question. I don't believe there are many environments out there where product designers are actually thriving. And a lot of that is based on the way business has set up their organization. For example, many design organizations report to product leaders, business leaders. And I think that's why designers and design teams and the creative space gets overshadowed because those leaders are great at what they do, but they maybe don't entirely understand design. And there's always this expectation for design to be outputting 90% of their work prototypes. And that is all over the place. I'm seeing it every single day. We're going to talk about my job hunt at some point in this conversation. But I can tell you when I tell companies the UX and UI job is about 10% of what they do. I think I miss out on opportunities because I'm too honest with that. But that is true. Creatives are problem solvers and innovators. And when we're only using designers to prototype, companies are missing out on great ideas, innovation, curiosity. We have to figure out how to use designers in a better way. But I don't think the environment is right for designers. I'll give you a quick example. This was back when I was on the creative direction team. Sometimes partners would complain, hey, your designers are bouncing off the wall. What I know about designers is sometimes they need to bounce off the wall. That helps with creativity. Sometimes they need to take a break or step away. This is what I talk about when it comes to a design process. Even if designers don't think they have a process or haven't figured out their process yet, in some ways they do have a process because they're not just magically spitting out these really great ideas. We have a way of figuring out their great idea. It takes work to get there. The misconception from the rest of the company is they're just going to flow with whatever we need. What we really need is the environment to bounce off the wall, lean on another designer or creative when we need to, and have the space to be like, I'm blocked. Sometimes you get creative blocks and you have to step away. You have to maybe jump into another project and then come back to it to get those creative juices going. These are things we don't talk about really in the product design world. Not very much, but I think we need to and probably will start talking about more in the future.
Thank you for sharing that and
Mhm.
for understanding my question. It makes me think of my experience recently where when my engineers commented, you haven't been at your desk all day. And I'm like, yeah, I've been talking to 500 different people about 20 different projects, but no, I haven't been sitting at my desk all day. It is that collaboration piece. It's that process of trying to understand what am I even trying to design here? Why do we need it? And it's not about just output.
Yeah. And I think what's great about what you shared is a lot of our partners have expectations of us and probably more expectation of designers than say like Eng, because many of us just can't understand what Eng does or how they do it. It's coding in a foreign language. And so how could we possibly put in our 2 cents in that? But for some, I know why. A lot of people have expectation of designers like that. Eng was like, hey, I haven't seen you at your desk all day. And that's an expectation where he or she just doesn't understand what your process is. And that's why I always recommend that designers are bringing their partners into their process so that they can understand why they're so busy or not at their table or, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a minute ago, talking about your job search. So we can dive into that a little bit. I know right now it's a pretty competitive space for UX design and you are experiencing it right now. And I would love for you to share anything valuable you are learning along the way, because I know a lot of people are going through something similar in trying to find their next job.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to get a lot of people who might disagree with this. But right now, the biggest problem for many people looking for a new job is the application tracking system. I actually don't think they're working very well yet. And I've had
Mhm.
more success by applying for jobs that have just launched. If you can start applying for jobs within 24 hours, I'm noticing that I get more calls from those positions than trying to beat the application tracking system, which is just trying to put as many keywords into my resume and application as possible. Now, what gets difficult about that is we have a lot of people giving recommendations of what to do with your resume to beat that or to get recognized in the ATS. And that's very hard for design because if our resume doesn't show up in a design form, meaning looking beautiful, you got great typography, great layout, then the application tracking system actually can't read it because of how you've potentially formatted it. So we actually have to strip out our visual design from our resumes in order for that ATS to find you. And I think in many ways, it's just stripping down a lot of authenticity, and I think that we're going to figure it out one day, but it's not happening quite yet. AI in general is still buggy. It's not there yet, but we
Mhm.
have to go through the buggy moments in order to work it out. But I don't think, as far as recruitment, it's there yet.
Thank you for sharing that. Are you doing anything besides? Okay, when you're talking about the ATS, I guess this is what's coming to my mind. You're putting your application out there amongst all the other applications that are going through that process. But are you doing anything more particular or more specific? This job came out today and I am applying my resume, but I'm also reaching out to somebody. Or are you adding in any extra
Yeah.
strategies?
Just straight off, the best way to get a position is to get recommended for a position. So you need to be nurturing your professional relationships and reaching out to people who've worked with you, ask them to potentially post for you or give a recommendation in LinkedIn, or just keep reminding them to be like, hey, if a job opens and you hear about it, just keep thinking of me. Sometimes people need reminders because we go back to our world. We want to be helpful for those trying to find a job, but sometimes the opportunity just isn't there and we forget. So I think staying close to the people who've worked with you, who would vouch for you, and just continuing to peek in and say, hey, don't forget about me. I'm still looking, I'm still trying. But also the jobs you really want, yes, reach out to that either hiring manager or recruiter with a note. And I don't recommend using Chat GPT unless you're using it to clean up what you've said. You really need to be authentic and show your personality when you're reaching out to recruiters.
Thanks. Can you talk about time in your career where you felt stuck or undervalued, and how did you move forward?
I'm going to be super transparent. In the majority of my time in this industry, I have felt undervalued. And I think it's just the design world. It's that part where we're not quite understood in a way where we're being used to our full capacity. We know that designers are frustrated. I think it was one of the last conferences, I can't remember who did this, but it was a big conference. And they told the product design world, we're going to be a design led organization. And during that conversation, the entire crowd of designers went nuts. They were so happy. That should be a signal that something is wrong in the industry. That many designers were so excited to take on the concept of design led organizations. It doesn't mean that we don't need our partners. We so need our partners. There's a lot of stuff that we can't do and can't be experts on. Let me talk a little bit about how I've influenced internally in organizations who don't understand these companies. One thing that we did, and I actually learned this from other leaders and I've carried it on to other organizations, when my designers start to dive into metrics and analytics and really understand the why of what they're doing, what we did was strategically try to get on the radar with our company. I worked for a company that didn't understand how to use the design team, one of the best design teams I've ever worked with. But we weren't getting used the way we wanted to be used. We had great ideas. So we wanted to get stakeholders' attention. And we started storytelling. I learned it from some of the people you work with. I've used it today as well. And what we do in Storytelling Hour is start working with metrics more because design tends to be a little bit behind when it comes to data and metrics. It instigates a conversation between the designer and the PM. which is so necessary. So it brings a lot of collaborative world. But what we did is we would deliver every month a storytelling one pager that said, hey, this is the metrics I worked on in the last 30 days, or these are the metrics I want to work on in the next 30 days. Then what we did is we took all of that content and information we are getting that was saying, hey, we're doing impactful things and speaking our stakeholders' language by speaking metrics. And we started to design a newsletter that was gorgeous. I'm going to give a shout out to Marilee Benson because she is a phenomenal designer and made us some very gorgeous newsletters. And we started to get like an open rate almost instantly internally of about 75%, which is really big, especially when there's a lot of internal messaging going out. But we were getting noticed by our stakeholders who were in a whole different state. And then we were starting to get called upon to be like, hey, we have this project. This other team normally does it, but can you come in and help? And so what it did is highlight all the good stuff that we were doing and talk about it regularly. And so that's one method that I've used to make sure that we're influencing everyone and they know who to go to when they need a certain level of creativity delivered.
Thank you. The storytelling piece, we have to get people's emotions involved and also speak their language in the business unit piece, right? With those metrics. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So we have mentioned quite frequently about how like UX design is misunderstood. How might you explain it to somebody to help them understand the value that we bring to a business?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think helping the company, even designers sometimes don't entirely get this, but outcomes over output. There's a little book. If you haven't heard of it, you need to read it. It's really short. You can read it in a day, but it is key. When you talk about what product designers do, I believe it's 100% outcomes, but we're being used for output. If you're doing output, you're taking direction and just cranking out everything without asking why or not knowing why. And every designer should know why they're making a certain decision. And if you don't know why you're making a certain decision, then you have some questions to ask. Start asking people in the company. But when it comes to outcomes, what designers are really doing is problem solving the change in user behavior they want to see. And that is so important because, like I mentioned before, we're not being used for this huge problem solving skill that we have. I think why it gets a little bit confusing is because every human is creative. The difference between a designer and another person standing next to me would be that design practices their creativity craft every single day. It's part of their job. They live it, they breathe it, they eat it. And so they essentially become so good at problem solving because they do it all the time. But they're also creative. They use their imagination to figure out how will this go if we go this route. And what that does is start to create hypotheses. And then we need to go and validate them. But when we're doing just outputs, those hypotheses are never getting validated. And then the product doesn't connect with the user.
I love that. You said something in there. Oh, if we want to change a user's experience, we have to decide what change we want them to make. I love that.
Yeah. It's really about the way that you frame it or you look at it. And that's what designers actually do best. I like to share some of the things that I've noticed about really great designers. If you ask me, what quality do I want in a great designer? The very first thing is going to be curiosity and question asking, because that's how we really bring a lot of value to teams. When you have a really great relationship with your trio and you're asking questions, you have this trust and they hear you, what you're doing is you're calling out questions that they maybe haven't thought of yet. And you're helping them to look good and to think about these things. And the more that you can do that for your partners, the more that they're going to be inviting you to the table. They're going to insist that you're at the table because they just can't do it without you. They need your perspective in there to partner with their business perspective or with their and the feasibility perspective. So it's so important.
Yeah. I did want to touch on, can you share how you see AI changing the landscape of UX design? It's obviously a hot topic right now, and I think there's a lot of fear mongering happening. And I just want to get perspectives from real designers who have experience in the design world of what is your perspective on it, and how do you think it's gonna change and evolve our industry.
I'm glad that you brought up fear mongering because it's absolutely happening. And I think a lot of designers are afraid, and I don't think they should be. I am excited for what AI is going to do for product design. It's going to take some of our job away in the production part. But the production part is the area that we tend to leave behind because we're sometimes going so fast in that feature factory. When I talk about production, I'm talking about design systems. Design systems are so hard for companies to maintain because it's so production heavy, takes up so much bandwidth from the designers. I think AI is going to fix that huge, gigantic problem that I think AI is going to make better will be within our design systems and how we use design systems. And I think we'll get to a point where designers are only putting in the new components. We need a new component to help this user get from point A to point B, and we don't have it in the component library. So now they'll just be making a component when they need to, and AI is going to help them make sure that it's not redundant or that it's used properly, or it's just going to make things much more efficient. Now, it's also helping with prototyping. Prototyping might in some way go away, but I think there's still going to be a lot of creative prototyping needed. But really, what AI is doing for product design is opening up that space for them to use their creativity. Creativity is innovation. Creativity is the ability to generate original ideas, solutions, or expression that are both novel and valuable. It involves combining existing concepts in new ways, seeing patterns others might miss, and using imagination to bring something new into being, whether it's art, a product, a story, or a way of thinking. So, in simpler terms, creativity is what happens when your brain says, what if, and then you follow it. And so I think that is where designers are going to start filling up the space. And I think that they're also going to really love that space because I hear consistently designers get into the business because they want to be creative and then they don't feel like they're being creative at all. And I think creativity is about to plop on their lap and they're going to get to use their problem solving and creative skills in the industry. So I'm actually really excited about what design gets to do and the way that they get to partner and that they really get to be used for the stuff they love to do. I didn't know I was a problem solver. I was like, I'm just creative. But when I think about my entire life as a highly creative person, I'm problem solving left and right. I like problems. I'm like, give me a challenge. I want to figure it out. That's how I got into this world. So I'm excited about AI. I don't believe it's taking our jobs. I do think it might take the industry a little bit to figure it out, but they will figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I like that perspective because I will say that is something that has been on my mind lately of like feeling like, am I even being creative in my job? Am I even using that skill? Because some days I come home so exhausted. I feel like I haven't done anything but just talk about the same over and over again without getting anywhere. And so I like that perspective. So thank you.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you wanted to share anything about your portrait business that you're doing
Oh.
or,
So I am thinking about starting a business centered around creativity. It's a big, scary jump, and you invest a lot of money when you want to start your own business. Everyone is creative, but we're not nurturing our creativity. Even somebody who says, I'm not creative, they are. They have creativity in them. It's not necessarily a portrait business, it's more about a business that brings creativity to everyone who needs it. I think creativity can be therapeutic in many ways. I think it can help you problem solve. I think it can help you be quicker with your ideation in the future. So it belongs in the corporate world, but also in the normal world because technology is becoming so much a part of our lives. People are going to want to do things hands on and find ways to connect with other people. And what better way than to go to a brick and mortar, sit down, relax. And if you want to draw, you can draw. There'll be someone there that can help you draw. But I want to expand it to all creative things like culinary, dance, writing. This is a big vision. I've got to narrow it down a little.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of feeding the world more creativity when I think they're going to need it because I think technology is going, there's a lot of humanity that goes into what we do. And I think there's a lot we still got to figure out about ourselves and humanity that creativity can offer. Some people, the last time they drew was maybe in high school. But I bet they're still creative if they love culinary or cooking dishes, or I bet some people wish they could still dance again. And that doesn't have to leave us. I want it to still be in our world. I want a place where somebody, and I just feel like dancing. They have dance night at this place. You don't have to be a dancer to show up.
Yeah. I love that. My other podcast recently had an artist, and that's what we talked about, using creativity as an outlet to then discover more of yourself. We're talking about getting out of the norm and having more ideas come to you because you are doing something that is intuitively human. It helps you connect more deeply to yourself, your values, and what you love. So I love that for sure. All right. So we're going to wrap up with a question from a listener who is a UX designer. And I'm calling this segment Ask the Designer. So I'm going to look up the list real quick and just pick one that is very relevant to what we've been talking about.
Maybe I can help you out with something I'd like to share.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
I've talked a lot about how sometimes the industry isn't made for us in some ways. What I want to share is what are designers notoriously bad at? Because I think that when people want to evolve, we got to talk about ourselves. A lot of times in my career, when I'm hearing a partner say, man, I'm just so frustrated with design, I want to find out why. And I've seen this throughout the years. So one of the first things that I hear the most is that designers are notoriously slow. And I think that is happening in some companies because designers are using design thinking for every single project. When they learn when is the right time to do iterative designs with their designs in production already, when to do design thinking, what types of projects they should just do and move forward on, and what they should say no to. If we don't have those guidances in place, then what we're doing is design thinking, and our partners are frustrated with us because we might just be placing a button on a page and we're design thinking it out. It's not necessary. So I think that's really key. I often hear about design actually not owning their own space, and I believe it 100%. Anytime I join a new team, I instantly go to the team and let them know that they are the owners of design. You are the decider in the design space. You are a leader. And it's very important that you're advocating for that design. We do product reviews. We tell our stakeholders what we're working on. And it's almost always the product manager having that discussion. But I really think that designers need to come into that discussion, especially if they want visibility into their value. They need to tell their story of their work within that discussion and get good at it. I often hear from companies or people that are frustrated. They're just like, designers don't show up to this thing. Show up to the things, especially if you want to be valued or understood or heard, and have a voice in those meetings. I think it's really important. One of the last ones that surprises me that designers don't do more often is within their storytelling using their creative skills. It's such a great outlet to go to your PM and say, hey, you have this meeting coming up. Can I make a one pager for you that really illustrates what you're trying to say? From a leadership perspective, I consistently have people come to me and they're talking at me, and all day long, I'm getting so much information. I think every leader has information overload. So, what is going to stick more? The person who's telling you what's going on the fly, or the person who shows up with a one pager? And I hate saying one pager because everyone has a different idea of a one pager. There's one pagers, five pagers in the business world. But what I'm talking about is a creative design. And what it does is it highlights the things that you really want your stakeholders to grab onto and understand so that they can make a decision that isn't filled with information overload. Help your product manager tell a story in a short, concise way, simplified way that's beautiful and looks good. Not only are you getting your creativity bug out, but then you're becoming valuable to those partners because you're able to help them tell the stories that they're struggling with.
Thank you for interjecting. I appreciate it. But it does make me think of a specific question that Valerie asked, and it's related to what you're talking about. She says, there are times when I present research, but it doesn't seem to fully convince the team why a design decision should or shouldn't be made. What has helped you communicate design decisions more effectively with your team?
Okay. The one pager to start out with, but I want to jump back to research. Sometimes the reason why our research doesn't always stick with our stakeholders is because it's a huge report that they don't always have time to read it. They want to, they care. It's just leaders have to sometimes prioritize where they're going to spend their time. Sometimes when I review research, you want to be like, look at what I did. I did this, I did that. It's very hard to edit your work sometimes, especially when you've spent so much time doing it. But really, what you need to provide for your stakeholders is in that first page, a short list of here are the top impacts. And
Mm.
these are the things that we want you to decide on, being clear, and then giving them the opportunity to read that research on their own. Stakeholders don't need to know everything, they need to know what you've learned and what you believe is the right direction and why. And if you can keep it that simple, you're probably going to get a lot more yeses.
Thank you so much. JJ, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and your wealth of information. I am so grateful that you're willing to chat with me today. Thank you for being here and for sharing.
Yeah, thank
And
you. Thank you for inviting me. I love that you do this and I love that you have a voice in our industry. Makes me happy.
thank you.